but maybe you had a grandparent that was there for you and that helped you and kind of helped mold who you are today. Well, one day, if you have children, you're probably going to have grandchildren. And so if you invest and you save up, and when you're 65 or 70 years old, you can be the grandparent to your grandchild like the grandparent was for you that helped you out. So California is pretty expensive.
Yeah, so I'll be in California next week. We're spending a couple days up there doing a music video. I'm taking, I don't know if he wants his name public, but the guy who works for me and my music video guy, all three of us are going up, and we're spending Monday and Tuesday next week in California. I'm looking forward to the weather, but I just had to buy a drone for that because my music video guy does not have a drone.
Drones are awesome.
Yeah, they are.
But they can be awesome.
They are so good at what they do now. I mean, so I spent quite a lot of money on this drone, but I mean, even for a few $100, you can get like, I'm not saying the best cinematic footage or whatever, but as far as the gimbal or like stabilizer system in them, it's incredible. I mean, against forces of pretty strong wind, you can be at a beach setting or whatever, and that thing is going to stand still like it's on a tripod. I mean, you just wouldn't know the difference. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think we talked about, I work in a construction company, and all our projects that we do, I think it'd be really neat to have a drone to do different footages and different shots and angles and stuff like that, marketing stuff or whatever.
Oh,
It'd
absolutely.
Be so cool.
Well, and they're just fun to fly too.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it.
I watched this thing earlier today. These guys would take a drone and they put thermal imaging on it, and they could go out in these large forestries, and they can survey different herds of deer, and they can find where they're bedding down. They found several injured deer and were able to get over there and help the deer.
Wow.
But especially in Texas, they like to track and record migration and sizes of herds and how they're doing the population, and that dictates sometimes what you can or can't do and the legal limit and all that for harvesting a deer. But it's pretty wild to see that thermal imaging in action.
So for the layman, what is thermal imaging?
Thermal imaging would
That's
be...
not like I'm asking for a friend, but legitimately for the people watching.
Yeah, so I guess the concept would be everything gives off some sort of temperature, and that temperature, if it's a hotter temperature, it would regulate the infrared, or the camera would be able to pick up a different heat signature. The ground would have a steady, consistent heat signature, whereas a living animal or a person would give off a hotter temperature just naturally in the evening or at night or whatever, and you can make it out kind of what it would be. There are certain rifles or certain optics that offer those services as well, and it is just really awesome technology.
That is so cool.
I mean, it's just wild. Same thing with night vision. I mean, the night vision nowadays is just wild what you can put on an AR or whatever other high-powered rifle.
Oh yeah.
So
the only thing is, do not stare at the sky for too long at night with night vision. You will just start to see things. There will be creepy men poking around the corner that are not there. It messes with your eyes.
Seriously?
Bro. Yeah. When you look through those things for too long, it really messes with you. James, I know this is not part of like a typical termite inspection or whatever, but haven't there been instances where people have found termite colonies and stuff with thermal imaging as well? Doesn't that happen?
That's true. The termite infestation will get like so bad, but not bad enough to where they pop through the sheetrock. So people see stains and moisture coming through the wall, and so they'll take the infrared gun and you'll see the whole colony right there.
That is so crazy.
Yeah, I know they use, we've hired inspectors to come to certain facilities and check for heat zones or hot zones in a building for insulation and stuff like that. But just all that technology is just wild to me, what you're able to do.
Potentially some leaks or other sorts of things.
Water leaks.
Well, from my perspective, I guess the first time I used a drone was I was doing what was it? Oh, it was my Fallen Soldiers song. I was recording a video on top of a building in Houston, but I called one of my video guys. I was like, okay, I've got this wild idea, because to me that's all it was. I didn't know how it would work. But I sent him a music video where there was this parallax circling motion around the artist. He was on top of a mountain, and I assumed it was probably a helicopter shot or something. But I was like, how can we emulate this look? He said, emulate it? We can do that. He said, I've got a 8K drone that'll get you some beautiful shots. I was like, okay, let's do it. So we booked a time and whatever, and he got up on the building with me and got some close up, with a gimbal in his hand, some handheld shots. But then other than that, it was on top of a parking garage. He went to the level below that, was controlling the drone from underneath me, and just circled me with it at different distances. We got some really cool shots. He got some, those things are good for I think 3 kilometers, at least the model he has. I don't know what that is in miles, like a mile and a half or something like that. But anyway, a long range. So, he flew over Houston. He was getting all kinds of shots, circling buildings, and just a lot of B-roll. It was crazy. So I've used drones in a couple shoots after that. But every time I learn something from one of these video guys, then I just want to use it in every video, because it's just all so cool.
My boss took a missions trip over to Kenya, and they took a drone, and they sent a drone out from the camp that they were at, and they actually started a stampede of wildebeest because they got so close that the wildebeest saw it because they were just kind of at eye level. First they were, however far above it, and they found the herd of wildebeest, and they flew down to it and got real close, but it scared them off and started a stampede. It was pretty cool to see. But yeah, that kind of stuff is just so neat. They were building a facility in what is that place they built? Not in Kenya, but another place. Oh, in Haiti. And they were in Haiti, and so they've got real high up in a mountain, and they got so high that their device was receiving U.S. military warning that they were flying too high with an unmanned drone or whatever.
Wow.
FDA or something like that. Somebody was sending them messages on their device that they're flying too high.
The Air Force was about to shoot down. They were.
Well, they're not even in America. They're in Haiti. Which is, so they're,
wow.
There's some
That's
sort of airspace
crazy.
regulation, which I know,
Right.
as that drone technology has taken off, there are entities, global entities that have certain regulations that are just
Right.
well known, or not well
That's
known,
so
but
crazy.
well recognized.
Well,
So,
I know a lot of them are geo-restricted, so there's certain areas around airports you can't
Yeah.
fly drones and different stuff like that. I know some people will jailbreak them and do it anyway, which is highly illegal. But it's just crazy how all of that works because I think the device connects Wi-Fi to your phone and then uses your cell signal to connect to the drone, which is connecting to satellite GPS, and so you're able to track it. And then they've got auto return and stuff.
Yeah.
So if it loses signal, it remembers your location, it flies back to you, and it's wild. My perception until that video of drones was like the toy Christmas drones I saw people get the last few years, because we only really started hearing about drones in the last 10 years, and really more so in the last 5 or 6 years probably.
Yeah.
But the technology has just advanced so much.
It's crazy to think how much money, even in the military, they're using drone warfare or whatever, and you hear about certain bombings and things that took place with drone attacks and stuff like that. It's just wild. We've got kids in our neighborhood who will be sitting out in the back patio, and there'll be a drone that flies over. Some
Right.
kids flying a drone over people's backyards, and some people get bothered about invasion of privacy and all that, but I'm not out there doing anything crazy, so I'm not really worried about it. But there
Right.
are some people that are concerned about it. I know when my dog was there, he didn't like it. There were several times that drone ended up in our backyard, and
Amazon's about to start delivering. Well,
Yeah.
I think they are
They
delivering
are,
with
yeah.
drones in certain areas, and I'm sure that'll come to our area soon because in Houston there's obviously a ton of those facilities. But speaking of the privacy in backyards and whatever, people get really weird about that. When I moved into my house, we had ADT setting up, cameras around our house. And the guy was up on a ladder, turned the camera sideways, and he's connecting wires and whatever. And my neighbors came over banging on my doors. These were kind of crazy neighbors. They're gone now. But banged on the door. My wife opens it up, and they were like, "You need to tell that guy to stop pointing that camera in my yard. We have private stuff happening in the yard." And we're like, okay, first of all, what the heck are you doing in your backyard? Secondly, he's setting it up. It's not even on yet, whatever. But people get weird about that. And I do wonder about that because every time we have a leap in technology, there is a greater invasion of privacy that just comes with it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. How do you balance that? At this point, I'm kind of like, I have to take my privacy seriously because I'm on social media so much and whatever. But I mean, as far as just basic information, I'm not hiding anything on my phone that is that valuable. I don't have that much money, so I mean, hack all my stuff.
I mean, I guess
fine.
there's an element to it I understand, and I can agree. You know, there is a point at which invasion of privacy happens. But how much of that, I mean, one, do we just not know, therefore we're ignorant of it? Or are we going to get so caught up and we're really putting tape over a camera? I mean, there are people that do weird things, but I just there's an odd perspective on both sides that we can be so anti and we swing the pendulum one way,
Right.
or we could be so for it we're just get in and we don't care about privacy at all. We could just be whatever, you know, and it just there's always a balance in it all.
Well, some of the most extreme people as far as worrying about their privacy online and whatever that I know are military members.
Sure.
And military members, if you're not aware, the government already knows everything about you. Literally, they didn't draw all that blood for nothing. They didn't look. I mean, before you enter the military, they're gonna have your social media. They're gonna have your medical records. They're gonna have access to everything because you signed all of that away. But that's for military members. You accept that when you go in. For the average, civilian, I get that because there are countries out there that are surveillance states, and you can't even go to a hotel room without there being cameras. I mean, there's wild stuff, and so I get not wanting our country to go that same direction, but I have no control over that. So,
well, just the technology sector in itself just never ceases to amaze me. Talk about AI and all this other development. I mean, with all that technology, just the other day, these people get back home from vacation and their home is destroyed because a demolition crew showed up to their house and demolished their house.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
what
who? They demolished their house, and then the neighbor came over because the neighbor was contacting the homeowner, and the homeowner's like, "No, I'm not wanting my home demoed." And so the neighbor went over there to the contractor, and the contractor's like, "You have no business being over here. We were paid to be here and demo this house or whatever." And anyways, the homeowner finally gets home, and the contractor was like, looking at the paperwork, "Oh, I have the wrong address," and then goes to the correct address and proceeds to demo the right house.
Did their house get partially demoed?
No, their house got demoed. The whole thing. They were loading it up in a truck. It was already done. The job was done. They were just
everything they owned
was gone.
Wow.
And so then it's like, so technology is so great, yet we still have sometimes things.
Human error exists.
Yeah, I mean, it just.
Well, and therefore AI error is going to exist because AI is based on human knowledge. That's all it is. I actually heard somebody. Oh, you heard them say it too. We were at the same place, but they said artificial intelligence is not intelligence. It's algorithm based, saying based on this word, what's the statistical likelihood that the next word will be X, and then it forms a sentence that way, and it takes all of the information available to it to make a correct decision. And internally, I'm like, isn't that what intelligence is? I mean, not consciousness, but I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I fully understand my phone is way more intelligent than I am. It is what it is, but AI has been a great tool to me in a lot of the stuff I've done. For instance, like it's easy to look up words that rhyme with whatever when you're writing a song, but you ask AI and you go, I need a three-syllable word that rhymes with this, but I need it to make sense in this sentence, or I need it to express this idea, or whatever, and it can really help you. It's like talking to a person who can help bounce ideas off of, and it really, really helps. It's crazy.
How is that going to affect schooling?
Oh, it already has. I'm still in school. I got a message from my college that basically said, hey, we know AI is here. We know it's not going anywhere. Use it, but don't plagiarize. We have software that's going to detect if.
But how do you plagiarize something that can be made up instantaneously based off mathematics and algorithms? Do I just cite my AI generator?
So there's supposed to be some like software to detect that it was created by AI or something. But there's no way that's going to be 100% accurate. And then it's going to start accusing people of using AI when they didn't use it. Because how are you going to know? Because I don't know. Some of it's it's
Couldn't you just
odd.
tell AI to generate something that's not generated ever before, since
Right.
it's all tied to the World Wide Web? And well, couldn't I just tell AI to say, hey, based off of the statistical data we have for all jackpots and lottery tickets, try to give me the best, most possible numbers possible, and then I'll go buy a lottery ticket for the Mega Millions.
Right.
I mean, what? Could we just do that? Am I on something or on to something?
I think you may have jumped over it, whatever it was. No, I mean, yeah, it's wild, but I mean, when you think about it, even like the college thing, people are going to use AI to get through college. Well, yeah, but even before that, I'm going to school online. You think all the answers to every test I take are not already on the internet? And so I actually heard a student in a conference call ask a professor that very question, like, okay, I don't mean to be the snitch, but like, you guys realize all of these answers are on the internet, right? And the professor's like, yeah, we know. There's no way to stop that, but use your resources and use them wisely. Be careful, because accounting 2 is going to be a lot harder than accounting 1 if you didn't pay attention in accounting 1, if you just used
Right.
the answers off the internet to pass. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's probably going to expose people more than it's really going to help, because
Yeah.
the people who try to take the shortcut, I mean, that works on trig, that works on maybe pre-cal and maybe cal 1 or whatever, but eventually it's going to be obvious that you never gained any knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to the applied or application
Right.
to those areas, it's gonna your company or whoever's gonna see right through all that, and you're gonna understand, okay, this guy just went by the internet. That's how he got his degree.
Right.
And not that degrees can make you successful. They can also, you can get a degree in something that you never use, and it's a piece of paper on the wall. But
Right.
there's a lot of people who are successful without having a college education. So
Well, I was visiting with a girl who's currently in school, and I was asking her what her major was and what she's doing. She said, well, I won't get into specifics, but she said this is what I'm going for. This is kind of what the career path would look like. And she said, but I'm doing a bunch of internships at the same time. I was like, that's really smart. She said, yeah, basically every career counselor I've talked to, every person in the industry I've talked to, they said, yeah, the degree is a box you have to check, but after that, nobody cares about your degree. It is about what you know and what you've actually done. And so she's doing it the smart way, and she's getting the degree to check the box while actually gaining experience at the same time. And I've met a lot of people who got the degree and got to the end expecting to go make 6 figures or whatever, and they don't realize you still have to start at the bottom, where regardless of career field. That's with a degree, without. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And a lot of times you'll take a pay cut to do that, so that in the future you can make more money,
it's wild. Well, back on that lottery ticket thing, it's just been playing in my head. But I read a report the other day that this lady from 1991 won the New York State largest jackpot of that time. 1991, she bought a ticket from the small town in Staten Island, and then she went on vacation, didn't realize she won, but then she went back home and saw the winning ticket, and no one had claimed it while she was out of town for 2 weeks. She's like, those are my numbers. Apparently she picked those numbers, and she could not find her lottery ticket. And while she was out of town, her neighbor came over and took the trash out, gathered up all the papers or whatever, took the trash out, and it went to the landfill or wherever it went. And she tried to call and track down that ticket, and she could not find it. And she just came out and said, that was my ticket from back in 1991, and there was nothing she could do about it.
What do they do if there's not a winner?
goes-
They go on to the next number? Or
No,
whatever?
it goes back into the pool, back into
Yeah.
the lottery
They
system, and
redraw
then
or whatever.
they redraw on the next one. So,
Wow. That's crazy. There was a guy who had some Bitcoin from the early 2000s or something on a hard drive, and it was stored there, and he password protected the hard drive and forgot the password.
oh no.
And he currently, in today's value, has I don't remember what it is, $40-something million in Bitcoin. And the thing is, he set that hard drive to have 3 attempts on the password, and he's attempted twice. And if he attempts one more time, the hard drive's going to reset itself. So he's just sitting on $40 million of Bitcoin in this thing. And he's scoured the internet, he's scoured IT people, and he can't get anybody who can get into it.
Oof.
$40-something million. It's just crazy.
I don't understand Bitcoin. I mean, I kind of understand it, but it's wild to me how it. I mean, it's kind of leveled off now, right?
Yeah, kind of. I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 20 years from now you're going to see a lot more Bitcoin. So, I mean, this is not financial advice. It could all fall tomorrow or whatever, too. But it seems like every several years it falls by like 80%. And then within a year, it's rebounded and it keeps growing. And then it falls 80% because something happens. And so it's very volatile because it's not regulated by anything. But I think that's why people want to invest in it, because it's not regulated by the government. And so every time the dollar crashes, Bitcoin surges. So I don't know. It's an idea. I'm not suggesting it. But
That's not your financial advice.
yeah, we are not financial professionals. Or any kind of professional. Don't listen to anything we say. We're just dudes on a podcast.
Yeah, just make good decisions over long periods of time.
Yeah. Make solid, good, moral, ethical decisions over a timeline of your life that is
Long.
exhaustive.
Yep.
No, so like when it comes to money, and investing and that sort of thing. Like, let's say we're talking to these college students. They're going through school, like they're about to start a career, or you've got an 18-year-old entering the trades or entering some other career path. What's like kind of the baseline advice that you would get, as if you're a financial professional, whatever. But if somebody sat down and said, Michael, mentoring me, what do I need to do to set myself up for the future? I want to retire someday. Like, what are some of those basic things?
And if I was young and in college still doing that, I would live on more ramen noodles and Totino's pizzas and microwave anything, just try to live on less than I can. I mean, just as little as possible. That's what I wanted to do, is just try to save as much money as I possibly could, so that when I do get out of college and I've got a better paying job, not the 6-figure job, but just something a little bit better, just keep stockpiling cash. And then when I get to a spot where it's whatever level that is, invest that early on. If you take $100 a
Right.
month and you invest it in a Roth IRA or whatever, do that at a very young age. And just, as hard as it will be to do that, do it, because when you're 60, that's going to pay off. And it may be 200, but you might want to start doing,
Right.
it was told to me 100. And so that would be my thing, is just try to live off cash. Don't, I mean, I'm not anti-credit card, but people just want to go get a credit card because they want money that they don't have. And that's not the way that thing works, but learn financial responsibility by maintaining cash. And then when you have that and you get out of college, go start investing.
Right.
You're investing in your future. So.
Well, because I feel like a lot of it is, I think the average net worth of the college graduate, like right out of school, is like negative $50,000 or something, because they're in loads of student loan debt or
Right.
whatever. So if there was a number one priority for college-aged people, I would say it's to stay out of debt. Because if you can avoid those interest rates, if you can avoid that at all, then you're going to set yourself up for the future. I am in a very fortunate position where, one, I was able to stay out of debt, over the last several years, but two, then I joined the Army and all my college is paid for anyway, but there's a lot of creative ways I've seen a lot of people get through school debt free in a lot of different ways, whether it's military service or whether it's finding a company that will pay for it, or if it's just grinding and paying for it yourself, you and your spouse both working overtime and making it happen, but imagine the relief that you have when you graduate with a degree and you can go get a higher paying job with no obligations to anybody.
No.
Because on the flip side, I've met a lot of people who finally got the degree and they finally have that higher paying job, but it feels like they're making less because now they got student loan payments to make,
Unless you were going through the program and got those debts forgiven by the President of the United States. There are people who have done that, and that program was out there for a while for people, and that's no longer there, but I think he's trying to pass another one to get that going.
So, from what I understand, nothing was forgiven. It was deferred.
Oh. Well, somebody...
So, student loan payments were paused, and they resumed in September, I think.
Those were paused, but I think somebody that I know had theirs, wiped. But it was only $10,000.
So that was the plan, was $10,000, which, first of all, who only has $10,000 of student loans? I mean, what in the world is that going to solve? But anyway, but then on the flip side of this, the government is backing student loans every single day to 18-year-olds that are taking out $80,000 student loans, and the government is co-signing on it. And then telling people that the debt is a bad thing, so it should be forgiven, when the government is the one who co-signed the loan in the first place. So it's just a really whack system, and all sides of the political aisle are kind of idiotic on it. But I mean, I think we need to stop the crazy student loan cycle before we worry about forgiving anything.
Well, I think okay, so you take the college going person or the person not going the college route. In both cases, both individuals need to worry about the future, not the now. And if I could go back to when I was 18 and I worried more about when I was 28 at the age of 18, I think I would have been better off today than where I was, financially speaking. Now, I eventually got there, but the route I took was just a little longer to land on that spot, and so I guess if I would tell myself at 18 years old is, for one who's going to college or one who's not going the college route, is, man, just focus on living on as little as you can and get through that career, whether you're going straight to the career path or going through the college route. Don't put everything on student loan. Work and grind, and I mean, you have no obligation. Just go to school. If you're going the career path, work and grind. I know a guy who worked well up into a company, and now he's very successful. He didn't go to college, and you don't have to go to college to be successful. But he worked from day one out of high school. He worked, and he got what he's got, and that's a great story.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but in the construction industry, at least, I can say what I've seen is they will say, we want a 4-year degree plus X amount of experience, or a combined amount of experience of this much. So let's say 4-year degree and 2 years of experience, or 6 years of experience, is a lot of times what I'm seeing in, let's say management positions or whatever. Generally, general contractors is what I'm familiar with. But a lot of time, I think people are in general moving away from college degrees, just societally and whatever in business. Now, that's not the case for a doctor or for a lawyer, obviously, or several other industries, I'm sure. But in a lot of cases that's happening. But if I started all over and started from scratch, would I go to school? Well, it's paid for by the Army, so of course it'd be a waste not to. It may open a door someday, and whatever. And education's never a bad thing. Most of the time, it's not a bad thing. But I mean, you're gonna slave away for 4 years to get a degree, or you're gonna slave away for 4 years working your way up in a company. So regardless, you got to slave away, and you just make it happen. Rent is higher than it's ever been, and mortgages are higher than they've ever been, and the economy is worse than it's been in a long time. And there's always going to be situations, there's always going to be excuses, but at the end of the day, all you can control is you. You cannot control all those other variables. So maybe your goal is less of a house than it would have been 10 years ago. That's fine. That's the cards you're dealt. But at the end of the day, if you're making $40,000 and spending $60,000, then when you make $60,000, you're going to spend $80,000. I mean, those habits don't change unless you start while you're not making much,
No. I just wish when I was 18, I had focused a little bit more on the future than the now. And I think it's just very natural. You're in high school, you get freedom whenever you go to high school. You're 14, you're now a grown up in your eyes. You feel like you've got the world on your shoulders. Then you get 16 and you're driving. So there's another milestone there. And then you turn 18 and you graduate high school. Now it's freedom. I remember walking away from project graduation and saying, well, now what? I wasn't going to go to college, didn't know if I was going to go or not. So I was going to go the community college route, but I had no direction. I just wanted to go make money, whatever that was, and so I started down that path, and it just kind of got me all kinds of which directions. And then finally I settled on, I've got to go and make this work, because what I'm doing now is not working. And so I just wish I would have focused in on it earlier than where I did. And I think if everybody, no matter what path you decide to take, if you just focus in on the future, start investing your time and your energy, learning some things whether it's OJT, on-the-job training, or whether it's going to college, learn, study, and learn from an older person. Let the older person teach you what they know. They're not going to be there forever either, you know, so.
Well, and we could add to this conversation, not going to college does not mean your education is over.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of what industry you're in, you've got to be a continual learner.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to learn from people who know more than you and who've experienced things you haven't. I mean, right now, like literally today, I drove to a school where someone I know teaches film so that I could get a lighting lesson, because this is now what I do for a living. And I sat there for a couple hours discussing and asking questions and whatever, quote unquote, taking a class, you know, with this individual. Right. That's not college. That I'm not going to school for film, but that is an aspect of my job that I need to get better at. And you've always got to be willing to learn.
Well, I work as a project manager in a construction company, and if I had a guy who had a degree and a guy who learned for those same 4 years, but this guy is willing to learn and willing to be taught versus the guy who thinks he's something because he's got a college degree, I'm hiring the guy with no degree every time. Because he's coachable, he's trainable, he's eager to learn. And if you're in college, stay eager to learn. You've learned for 4 years, that doesn't mean you know everything. Go learn in the field. You know, if you're learning in the field, study more. Work underneath guys who have done it for a long time, and just be coachable, you know. And that's the thing I'm looking for in superintendents. That's the thing I'm looking for in project managers and stuff like that. So.
Well, and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, but we've had a lot of people with college degrees digging trenches and sweeping floors on construction sites.
Oh, yeah.
Because regardless of the degree, you still have to start somewhere.
Yep.
And that's okay. That's not a bad thing.
No.
The thing is, you have to accept that, because I do know people who graduate college and then they're unemployed for 2 years because they refuse to get those jobs because they were told that once they graduate, they'll get a prestigious job, you know. And maybe that's somewhat kind of the case in certain situations, but even in extreme situations like doctors, you still have years of residency to do after your schooling is complete.
You're still learning.
Because you have to learn in real life and see real life situations and learn from those people day in, day out, not just on paper. You know?
Well, I mean, one of the things is, you know, whenever you start, you want to learn the whole gambit of what's going on in your industry. So the best place to start is at the bottom and to work your way up. I mean, if you start entry level at the very top, you don't have an understanding or an appreciation of the people who are doing the other things below you. And that's the thing I like about the company that I work for. I started at the bottom where I was doing X, Y, and Z, and I just moved up through the ranks because of my work ethic. I was trainable, I was coachable, and now being there for many years, it's paid off because I've been eager to learn and wanting to be trained. And so,
do you think that's the exception in career in whatever career you choose, that loyalty actually pays off? Because there's been several studies over the last several years that have shown the people who make the most money are the people who change jobs about every 2 years.
People who make the most?
Yes.
Well, it's not me. I don't make a lot of money, but I'm very loyal. So.
Well, and I just found that really interesting because it's kind of contrary to what you would think. But I guess it's just the fact that you're staying competitive and you've now garnered experience from several different companies with different, you know, types of business and whatever. But I think there are exceptions to that rule. There are companies that actually will reward loyalty as well. A lot won't. A lot you work there for a couple of years and you're stagnant, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the industry. I also think, you know, inflation plays a little bit into that too. You know, what you made 5 years ago, if you kept that same payment today, you're making less money essentially because of inflation. It's just risen in the last 5 years, yet your salary is still the same.
Right.
You know, so your money's going to fewer things because it costs more. But I would hope that people are, you know, loyalty should be honored, you know, but there's some industries that, I mean, I know like big box stores, grocery stores and fulfillment services and places like that. For their long tenured folks, they take care of them, you know, delivery services and stuff like that. It just, I've known people that have said, okay, I've worked here for 37 years and I was able to retire and they gave me a great, you know, exit plan.
Man, I know a guy who worked at Home Depot, started as a cashier and ended as some executive. And I mean, I've walked in his house, bro.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's like
he has a car collection like something I've never seen. Home Depot, know.
But where did he start? He started at the bottom.
And there's certain companies that will reward that. Now, we have to acknowledge there's sucky companies out there too. Sure. I mean, it just exists. And I know of a particular restaurant chain where at least the store that I know of, how it's operated, I know the people at the bottom working full-time were making $12, $13 an hour. The general manager of the store was making $15 an hour. And I knew like 6 GMs at that store, and all of them got fired after the first 6 months or a year or whatever. And I just watched it. As soon as somebody got promoted, I was like, man, rip. It was nice knowing you. But they just pushed people so hard, and it was drive performance with not good pay. And I think a lot of GMs just they totally lost their passion for it, because why for $2 more am I going to have my whole life flipped upside down over this store, Right. So that exists. So if you're in that situation, maybe move every 2 years. But but I will say at the last job that I was at, the reason it took me so long to dive full time into the music is because I was treated well. And I worked with great people, and I loved the work I do. And I even told my boss on the, once I took him to lunch and said, hey, you got me for 2 more weeks. Part of the conversation was, man, I want you to know the reason it took this long is because this isn't a dead-end job. Like, I don't hate going to work every day. I actually love coming here. Yeah. Now, I love what I'm doing. I love the opportunity that I've got, in this other avenue. But there's a reason I've stuck around, and those bridges are not burned, and, there's still relationship there and whatever. But that's because I was treated well there, Now, I also think it's because I worked hard and I was a valuable employee, and I, tried. And I saw other people go in and not perform and got let go and all of the above. But sometimes those companies are hard to find, especially today when there's just, it's last few years there's been a labor shortage and a lot of people not wanting to work. And I think the morale of workers overall over the last couple of years, from what I've seen, has just gone down. And in turn, companies are just rotating through people. It's like a lot have just stopped caring.
Well, I think there's an element here, though, too. Like, I grew up, my dad was in construction, and I just knew that I didn't want to do construction. I was done sweeping job sites. I was done getting up early and driving across town to be with my dad and clean a job site or walk around the job site and point out all the things that people were doing. I just got tired of that. But I was a kid. And what do I do today? I manage job sites. That's what I do. Now I manage more than one, but I always thought I was never going to, I always had a different path in my mind, and so there's a, saying that you say, love what you do, or do what you love. Right. And I've grown to more love what I do. Every day I get up, I love doing construction, what I do for a living. And I thought from a young age I wasn't going to do this, and I thought I was going to hate it. And that's why I was going to try to go a different option. I was going to go be an engineer or an architect. Right. That's what I wanted to go try and do. But when I got in those deals, I was like, that's not me. It's just not me. So I found an avenue that I was like, let me try this. And then, shortly thereafter, I was like, okay, I'm going to love what I do. Right. And I think if people find something, start loving what you do. So you get up every day. It's not work. It's an opportunity. It's for you to go and be challenged and you to grow and learn and have this personal growth. And if you start loving what you do, it makes going to work every day a little bit easier. Right. And there are times that the day flies by at the office, and it's just like, where is today gone? And it's just, I love what I do. I wake up every day and I enjoy what I do.
Well, another just opinion of mine, working for small companies is one of the best things you can do. Now, let me be clear. If you need a job, go get a job. There's no excuse to sit around and wait for the perfect thing, because it doesn't exist. But if you ever have an opportunity to work for, 20 or less, 10 or less employees that actually does business, like you're not worried that they're going to still be around in a few years, they've got a track record, but it's small. A lot of times if you get a good impression from the people, those are the people to learn from, because they'll actually take you under their wing, because those are the companies that it's an investment for them to hire somebody. So when they do hire somebody, they want them to stick around. They want them to learn, and they want them to be able to grow and stay loyal. And I can say that about the last few companies I've worked for, that the owner or the managers or the whatever that have been doing it for 20 years, they are happy to take you under their wing and teach you everything they know, because they're a small company. They only have so many people, so they need the people there to be high performers. And if you're willing to be a high performer, if you're willing to actually put in that work and be coachable, like you said, there's a lot of good opportunities. And then you get into maybe some education opportunities with those companies, because, again, they need loyal people. They're not dealing with 500 to where if somebody leaves, it's not a big deal. When you have 10 employees and somebody leaves, it hurts, Yeah. And so a lot of times they're just really willing to invest into you. And those are some of the best opportunities I've gotten in the workforce.
Yeah, and I would suggest to anyone who is listening that I've been in restaurant business, I've been in sales, and now I'm in construction. And every one of those times that someone has applied for a job or turning in their job application to submit for an opportunity, 9 times out of 10 we hired the guy who was consistently coming to us, checking in. Where are we at on this? It's not just, let me drop this piece of paper off and leave and I never hear from you again. It's a guy who's persistent, a guy who actually, or guy or gal, an individual who wants the job bad enough where they're going to come in and say, I just want to see, can I get an interview, or what can I do to work here? What is it going to take? And then you start this line of questioning, you build this rapport with these people, and you may get turned down a time or two. But I'm telling you, you keep coming in and not pestering, but you keep coming in and saying, this is important to me for me to be here.
I'm passionate about this.
I'm passionate about this. Let me come in and wow you. Someone with that kind of drive.
Because what kind of manager is that going to be?
Exactly.
What kind of worker is that going to be? Or they're going to follow through with their jobs. They're going to be, consistent and reliable. And we were talking about finances or whatever, but there's Dave Ramsey, right, is a big name in that space. He's got this guy who worked for him, Ken Coleman, who's got a book that I have not read, but I've learned a lot just from listening to him, and the book's called The Proximity Principle. And the idea is put yourself around the types of people that will make you successful, right? And that's just a general rule for life, as a whole. But when it comes to careers and that sort of thing, be willing to put yourself around those people. Go to the chamber lunches, go to the networking events, go to whatever. Rub shoulders with the types of people you want to work around. Build those connections. And you can't get that guy to answer his phone, go meet him at that network event. Put a face to your name. Stay consistent, because those opportunities present themselves. And one of the small companies I worked for that James is very familiar with is where I learned the value of networking and what that means to a business long term and to a business owner long term. And those long term relationships, connections that you meet them today, and that may not pay off for 10 years, but 10 years from now they're going to think of you because you've been a consistent face at those meetings and whatever. Recently there's been some people that work with some nonprofits and that sort of thing that I've met, like literally just this last week. That's huge valuable connections for me to have, and people I'd love to work with, and it's opened up some opportunities here in the near future. And that only happened because I was spending time at a charity event, around those types of people. And when it comes to your career opportunities and the types of people you want to work for, put yourself around those types of people. If you're hanging around a bunch of goons all the time, you're gonna get the goon career opportunities. It just is what it is.
And I know networking's not for everybody. Like, there's people who can't get in front of other people, but we're not even saying get in front of a bunch of people and give some elaborate speech. We're talking about going and building relationships with people. The company I work for today comes from me getting out there and talking to people, meeting people. I met the company that I work for through networking from a smaller company. Right. That's how it started, because I got out there and got my name out there, and I got to meet certain individuals, and then eventually I moved to this organization. But that's what I mean. If we just sit at home and we don't get out, we don't meet people and build relationships, it's hard to be successful in that. It goes back to that, proximity principle.
Well, and underrated networking opportunities. All right, the gym. The types of people that you meet when you see somebody's grind, you see that they're a disciplined individual. They show up at the same time every day. You get those, talks in between sets. I mean, I've met a lot of people weightlifting. And I'm not saying that that's the reason to go to the gym, but that's a bonus to being a disciplined individual that has a consistent schedule, puts yourself around people and that sort of thing. Church is a place where you're just going to meet people. Now, don't go to church just to network, but as a part of being a disciplined individual that's spiritually committed to something, whatever, you're going to meet other like-minded people that could also open up some of those opportunities for you, because those are just valuable relationships in your life. Things like charity opportunities. Find something you're passionate about. Maybe that somebody doesn't go to church, but they're going to these nonprofit organizations, charity events, and things that they're passionate about, doing work in the community. You're going to meet other people who are passionate about literally that same thing because they're at the same event as you. And put yourself around those people. You just never know who you're going to meet. I think they say you're 6 people away from literally everybody in the world, right? Yeah. Well, some of these people I met this last week are a friend of a friend, and I got introduced to them at this event because my friend said, hey, I think you guys would work really well together, and made that connection for me, and I appreciate that guy. I want to be that guy for other people, but that's just what happens when you're building relationships. Genuinely, don't do it just to see if you can get something out of it, but build relationships, try to add to people's lives, and most of the time that's eventually going to come back around.
Yeah, I think that's huge on the building relationships. I mean, it could be a chamber event, and you don't have to own a business. You can go and meet business people. Maybe you're looking for a job. Contact your local
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, and just see if you can go and just visit, and then you get 100 different vendors there, 100 different companies, and then you can go meet them all. Maybe something piques your interest, and you can go and just build a relationship. Tell me more about your business.
Right.
Tell me how you got involved in that. Tell me about who you are. Where do you work? And you start building this relationship, and then,
business owners know business owners too. I mean, and there's something impressive, like you said, about somebody who's willing to stick their neck out like that. And I've been to networking events where I've seen people hired there on the spot. But it's because they showed up to a networking event.
There was initiative.
When they introduced themselves, they said, I'm in between jobs and I'm looking for opportunities in this area. I got laid off from ExxonMobil or whatever, and I want to work in this career field. I'm here trying to meet those types of people. And even if that individual that you're trying to meet is not there, somebody in the room goes, hey, let me see if I can get you in contact with my friend. I know they're hiring or whatever, And that just means more than a face on an application, or well, your face probably isn't even on the application, a name on an application. I remember my last company, we put up a job listing and we had like 200 responses in the same day, right?
Jeez.
I mean, to be fair, I got hired that way. Somehow my name stuck out in that crowd, so there's probably some skill in resumes and all that sort of stuff, but my only point is you're in competition, and so if you can have someone sponsoring you, quote unquote, somebody making that introduction for you, or you in person making that introduction, it just goes a long way.
It's like that mural or that painting on that bridge in Houston. Be someone.
Yeah.
Go be somebody. Go be somebody. Go meet someone. Go sell yourself and make yourself valuable to a company. And when you do that, people will find the value in you. You're wanting to be taught. You want to be trained. Go learn. I just think that's huge.
Well, I think about the last 2 people I've hired. One I met through a film networking organization. And the person was looking for a job in that space, wanted to work in social media, right? The second was the brother of a good friend of mine that I've stayed in contact with because we have he's one of my best friends, but in life in general, we have a lot of similar goals, aspirations, passions as far as God and family and fitness and a lot of other things. And the only reason that this connection happened was because I had dinner with my friend talking about life and things we're passionate about, and work got brought up, and he said, I know somebody, my brother, who just graduated with a degree in what you're talking about and is looking for somewhere to start. You know, that wouldn't have happened if, one, I wasn't continuing that relationship with my friend, but if he was not the kind of guy who could be recommended, by his own brother, who I trust, I know him, and I know of his family, and I know these are people of character, and that's just the advantage to having people on your side and a community around you who will put their name behind your name.
Mm-hmm.
So
work hard, boys and gals. That's what life's about.
Take out student loans.
Don't lose your lottery ticket.
Go get in car debt.
No, I think what what I want to teach even my children is some of that self-discipline too. Part of it is discipline. We can't expect to sit at home and to then, I counseled a guy one time, and he sat in my house and he said, "This is what I want." I'm like, bro, you didn't see the 10 years it took to get here. You saw the result of 10 years of hard work, of good choices over long periods of time. That's what you saw. You saw the result. You saw the fruit of the seed and the work of the vineyard, or work of the farm, or all those analogies, right? And I'm like, you don't just wake up and have this one day. And what I have is not great. I'm just saying that I've worked for what I have, and you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, I decide I'm going to be a millionaire today.
Right.
I'm not a millionaire. I'm just saying we gotta put in effort. We gotta put in the work. We gotta put in the grind. And if we do that in work, and we get up every day and we go make life happen, I'm telling you, someone will find that, and companies and owners want individuals like that. Right now,
because I'm just being honest, you're going to stand out if you're a motivated individual.
Yes.
And instead, I just see this culture of envy.
Yeah.
It's the boss makes this much money, the managers make this much money. Look, there's some crappy bosses and some crappy managers out there. They exist. But before you judge that, go ask that person what they did to get to where they're at. Be willing to learn from them, because that manager didn't just wake up a manager. That business owner didn't just wake up making 10 times as much money as you.
Yeah.
They own the business. Ask them what they did.
Yeah.
And go start a competing business, unless you signed a non-competition agreement or whatever. But I mean, these people didn't just wake up that way. I guarantee you, the first 3, 4, 5 years of their business, they were just struggling to eat, But they got to the point where they could hire people and have other people do a lot of the technical work for them, so that they can be managers and entrepreneurs. They had to work to get to that point. And aside from that, be thankful that somebody offered you a job. I mean, they also could have just not grown the economy and not given you an opportunity to make a living, So instead of living your life with envy, try to learn from the people who have accomplished what you haven't. And look, if you don't accomplish that at the end of the day, but you tried hard, then go to bed at night knowing that you tried hard, and wake up the next day and move on. And maybe there is a crappy boss. Maybe there is a selfish manager, but...
You asked earlier about my younger self. If I had to do something different, what would I do? Or like earlier on, one of the points I would like to make is delayed gratification. If I had delayed wanting, it goes back, and it goes to your envy point too. We all want something nice, whatever that is. Well, if we delay that for a second and we really work towards getting it, it's not wrong to save up your money and then go purchase or invest or go do what we want to go do. But just don't make an impulse buy. And people nowadays, there's so much money out there or credit out there you could get, and you just go spend money, and then you're not realizing you just signed up for a 23% interest. That's just foolish, and it's just not wise. And if we can delay that satisfaction for a while, that gratification for a while, I think if you learn that in an early state, man, you're going to sit there 15 years from now and say, man, look, I've worked for all this. This is a good feeling. I'm now in a comfortable spot where I can give more. I can help people more. I can show people to delay this. I can teach this to other people, and I think that's a huge, huge part of financial success, is delaying the impulse buy, or delaying the envy, delaying all that stuff, and putting all that off and saying, I'm going to work towards a bigger cause, bigger than myself.
Right.
and hopefully you teach that to your children and and others. So
Well, and instead of asking the question, how much per month can I afford in payments?
yeah,
Ask, how much am I willing to save per month for how long to get what I want?
yeah,
Because if you sign up for a $500 car note that lasts for 6 years, which I think is less than the average in the U.S. for used or new cars, which is just insanity. But anyway, if you sign up for that, would you be willing to save that $500 every single month for 6 years to get that car?
Yeah.
Would you really?
yeah,
So think through these decisions. It's not just $500 a month that you can get rid of it at any time.
Yeah.
This is a depreciating asset, and I think that's probably the number one place I would start if I was talking to a young person about how money works and how to get ahead.
Yeah.
It's understand what goes up in value and what goes down in value. Meaning, if I buy a house today, odds are, and history will tell me, that 10 years from now that house will be worth even more. So when I go to sell it, I will likely make money on the house. Doesn't happen every time, but that's generally how it works. When I buy a car, 6 months later, it is worth less than I paid for it, by probably a lot. And when you go to sell it, you will lose money. And then what people do is they say, okay, well, this car is worth $6,000, but I still owe $8,000 on it, which means if I sell it back to the dealership, I now have $2,000 of debt. Well, just add that on to the debt on the next car I buy. And man, I know people who've bought 4, 5, 6 cars in the last 4, 5, 6 years, and they probably owe $90,000 on a $40,000 car because they roll it and they roll it and they roll it, and their payment gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's okay because I can still afford the payment. Well, that $90,000 of debt is still on your name. It will be paid back eventually. And so just understand what goes up in value, what goes down in value, and if you can at all stay away from paying payments on anything, just do it, especially if it goes down in value, And
I'd like to correct something I said a second ago. Don't delay envy. You don't want envy. Don't be envious. Delay the want and the need for it now.
Right.
Delay it. And if it's not bad to want something, but work towards that. Don't make that the focus, and Christmas comes every year and you want to buy gifts for your family. Well, there's no reason to take out a loan for Christmas. No reason.
You literally know it's coming.
Every year. Guess what? It's going to happen in a few months. And then guess what? It's going to happen in 14 months. And guess what's going to happen in, we can keep going. So we know what's going to happen. Birthdays happen every year. Your birthday happen every year?
I think so.
Mine happens every
Unless
year.
it's on a leap year day.
Oh, you're one of those. So you're like 5 years old. But I've talked to so many people, and Christmas, you get your kid a cardboard box, I promise you they'll be fine. They play with those anyway, so.
Well, I just totally lost. Oh, okay. So these are not the Fleming financial steps, okay? I'm not saying these are things people have to stick to, but find some rules of thumb for yourself and stick to them. Have the discipline to stick to it even when you really want something, even when it makes it hard on you. One of my rules of thumb is when I decide I want a certain car, I wait a year to buy that car. 12 months. In the span of cars, that's not a long time. Save extra money, get yourself extra cushion, wait the 12 months, have the money, buy the car. One of my rules is when I get a raise, I'm going to raise our monthly budget, what is going out, by 20% of that raise. So you start making $1,000 more per month, my budget is going to go up by $200 per month. The other 80% of that is going to be given charitably and saved in proportion. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that that's a rule that works in every situation. If you're barely making it and you get a $1,000 raise, a lot more of that $1,000 is probably going to go to necessities. I get there's differences depending on your situation, but find rules of thumb that work, because if you were surviving on this amount and you start making more, guess what? You can still survive on what you were making before, probably, unless you were drowning in debt. But pay off the debt. If you're going to borrow money on things that go up in value, not down in value, or else you end up drowning in debt on something that's worth less than what you owe. And set some rules in your life. I have certain rules as far as what kind of house I'm going to get based on my annual income. rules on what kind of car I can comfortably afford to pay cash for based on my annual income. How much of a raise I'm going to give myself when on paper I get a raise in salary. You know, find some rules, and then don't just change them when it's convenient.
Yeah.
Stick to the rules, stick to your guns, and be disciplined, because 12, 14, 24, 72 months from now, you're going to be happy you did.
Yeah. And I think going back to your model for the car, I think that's huge, because what changes in 1 year from a car to car? Not a whole lot. Now, there are some changes that happen, but you can also probably now afford a better car than the car you were thinking the first time, because you've now saved up.
And
Chances are.
Also mention, you don't have to buy a new car.
Yeah.
Because I hear the argument all the time, well, Jonathan, it's impossible to pay cash for cars now. Have you seen what new cars go for? Well, if you can't afford a new car, then
don't buy
a new car.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can't afford $1 million house, guess what? I don't live in $1 million house. So there was a time when all I could afford was to rent a room from somebody. I rented a room. I mean, I don't just use apartment pricing as an excuse to go get something I can't afford, right?
Yeah.
So
it's about how you think and your mindset. So, James, you have anything to add on financial success?
No, I don't.
Well, we know Michael's not a millionaire, so he's probably worth $999,999.
No, I'm worth $2 million.
I'm a decamillionaire.
I didn't know if you had a different perspective. I mean, you're young, you're working a physical job, and you probably have different goals and aspirations. I'm at a different spot in my life. I've got a wife and kids. He's at a different spot. He's got a wife and kid, and you're a singleton. I mean, that's just right now. I'm not knocking.
You're freaking lonely. Do you cry yourself to sleep at night?
Wow. The woman that finds you will be lucky to have you. Yes, but my point is your perspective is just different than mine. I'm trying to train kids, and me and my wife are working towards common goals. Your spot in life is different. What's your take on finances? Like, do you have any advice for our listeners?
Well, I mean, I've gone through some up times and down times. There were times where I have been very blessed to have people who had my back, and then there were times that I was very, very disciplined. But the one thing that has stayed consistent is kind of on the investment side. Since basically the day I turned 18, I've been putting away in a Roth IRA every single month, and that that amount has raised as I could make it raise. And so there have been times where there's the big savings and the small savings, the long term and the short term, right? The long term has always, been very consistent. Short term, there's been stuff that's just put me, and a lot of it's just life. Some of it has been bad decisions and not good discipline, but a lot of it has been life. For my short term savings, it's kind of doubled as an emergency fund, vehicle problems, everything else. But for the most part, it's just about being intentional. Think about what you're doing before you swipe the card,
Yeah. Intentionality and consistency.
Because think about where you're going to be in 10 years, and then think about where you're going to be in 50 years. And you want those to be both ahead of where you're at now.
Yeah.
One, a lot more.
Well, and let's take a second to appreciate what you said about investing, because it amazes me how many people do not know or have not been taught the difference between simple and compound interest. Okay, when you sign up for a car loan, you're signing up for simple interest, meaning there's a set amount of interest per year that you signed up for that loan. So if that's 6 years at 10%, that's going to be split up into your payments over 6 years, and you're paying the same amount of interest the whole time. Compound interest means that each year that interest grows with the amount, not the interest rate, but the amount of interest accrued. So if I invest $100 and it makes 10%, I now, after a year, have $110. Over the next year, 10% of $110 is $11. So now I have $121. And then 10% of that is $12.10. So now I've got $133.10, and so on and so on. And it looks like this over time. But what's 10% of $1 million? Well, now you're making $100,000 in a year. What's 10% of $10 million? That's $1 million in a year. So as the money grows over more time, a long period of time of your good decisions, all of a sudden that starts to stack on itself. And so the difference between starting investing at 25 and starting investing at 18 is huge.
Yep.
That 7 years of growth on the tail end is a lot of money building on itself. And it really does. I mean, people want to say you're crazy and say it's unrealistic today and the economy is not what it used to be. Okay, boomer, whatever. But a couple $100 a month for 30, 40 years will make you a millionaire mathematically.
And maybe that means you don't go and get the coffee, barista, whatever drink. Maybe you don't go out to eat twice a month and you go home and eat a PB&J sandwich. Maybe that's what that means. It's discipline though. You have to say, okay, I am going to not eat out or not have this coffee drink or not overindulge over here so that I can store it up and invest or do something else with it later. I mean, if we take those very simple, practical moments and we do that, it'll pay off.
And I hear people say, well, I don't want to sacrifice when I'm young just to have money when I'm too old to enjoy it. Okay. 55, 60, 65, first of all, if you take care of yourself, is not too old to enjoy money.
You're still in your prime.
But secondly, we're talking about taking care of yourself when you're old. We're not talking about making you rich so that you can go buy a yacht and live it up on a beach somewhere. We're talking about when you're 60, you can stop working. Do you want to work until you're 99 or on your deathbed or whatever? I mean, or do you want to have to work? Maybe you do, but the idea is to have the freedom eventually to make those decisions. And that's at a few $100s a month. If you can, by the time you're 30 and you're making 3 times as much money, you can be investing 3 times as much, and you can invest earlier or any of those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, if we think about today and what we want to enjoy today, we will regret it in the future.
We've talked in the past about having, setting up for the future, raising kids that are a better version of us. And maybe you've not had the blessing of had good parents, and there's been a struggle in your, childhood. But maybe you had a grandparent that was there for you and that helped you and kind of helped mold who you are today. Well, one day, if you have children, you're probably going to have grandchildren. And so if you invest and you save up, and when you're 65 or 70 years old, you can be the grandparent to your grandchild like the grandparent was for you that helped you out and that helped guide you along. And so, but what that takes is a lot of decisions early on in life to save and to be self-disciplined and to be intentional and all those things so that you can also pour on those blessings on your grandchildren one day. But that's a 50-year goal.
And a lot of people are going to be pessimistic and are going to say, well, the economy's going down and things aren't looking better. There's no point in trying. And if you're that person, sorry, your life's just going to stink. But if you think the economy is going down and you think that it's going to be harder on your children than it is for you and harder on your grandchildren than it is for your children, if you really believe that, which that may be the case, then do something. Yeah. If you care about your family, set them up. Because if it truly is going to be harder for them than it is for you, are you just going to leave them out to dry? Because that means you actually have more opportunity than they will, whether it's the opportunity your grandparents had or not. Break the chain right now. Change the family tree.